So maybe just to kick us off, for people who don't know anything about TimeStalker, what can they expect going into your film?
If you come see this film, it is fun. It's not homework, this film. It's actually fun in a room. Like, if you're with other people will be laughing at the same time as you, and it will be a communal experience. You know, it's a big idea. It's like I was inspired by 80s things like Back to the Future, where it just feels like a movie. You know, you get your popcorn and you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to see stuff, and you're going to have fun and laugh.
Yeah, what's the original idea, I guess, for this sort of, you could say that it's a romantic comedy, I guess, in some respects, but is it also a lot about kind of artistic endeavor, like that obsession, that self-destructive mode you can get into? You know, what were kind of the things you were thinking about when you were writing it?
When I first came up with this idea, it was this sense of like, well, you don't get to make many films, really, independent films. So I was like, yeah, I've got to put everything that I love in it. And reincarnation just meant that I could use lots of different eras, lots of different costumes, everything that I love. But actually, in doing that, I sort of realized, like, you know, reincarnation is like acting. It's like, you know, you play different roles, and if you're lucky, you get to reinvent your career, and maybe you die on stage and you get to live again as a different character. Really, that's like a lot of things that any artistic community is trying to do, just especially in this economic climate, we're all just trying to keep going. And quite often it's a crazy dream. It's a crazy romantic dream to make films, like one that you're not sure there's any reward at the end of it, really. Yeah, so a lot of that went into it, this sort of sadness of just trying to do something you really have belief in. And I love fantasy, I love magic, I love, you know, romance. So it's all of that. But at the same time, some of those ideas can be quite damaging. You know, some rom-coms give us damaging ideas about romantic relationships, and even romanticism can be damaging. You know, it's like an idealism. So it's about, you know, what are the pitfalls of that? You know, when movies tell us that there's one person out there that's your twin soul or whatever, that can be quite damaging, because, you know, you don't always get what you want. So it was challenging a lot of the narratives of rom-coms that we're fed, really. How do you do a modern twist on that to kind of really make it relevant to how we all operate and feel in today's society, basically?
And it feels very original, not just in the storytelling, but the way it looks as well. You know, it's kind of all got this sort of surreal, dreamlike feel to it. And then, of course, going through all these different time periods, the costumes, everything. What was your approach in that sense? And did you have a favorite moment? Did you have a favorite era?
I can't say no to an 18th century wig, basically. I love a corset, but they're really uncomfortable, obviously. But I have to say I love the 80s. It's just my spiritual home, I think. I just think there's so much beauty and funniness and melancholy and about the 80s. I mean, it is a fantasy. The whole thing is a rose-tinted Vaseline on the lens fantasy. And really, I was just like interested in, like, if you have a female obsessive who's a fantasist, what's going on in their head? How do they see the world? And, you know, they might be doing illegal things, but to them it's all a misty, rose-tinted fantasy. So really you're trapped in her perspective and in her world, which is all very magical and dreamy. But, you know, there is a dark underbelly to all of that stuff. And really, yeah, well, I just wanted it to not look like your typical British film. I think a lot of British films, many which I absolutely love, are low budget, so you don't get much sunlight. You might have to film in a house and it might end up being quite grey. And I really was like, I want to be ambitious for this and make something theatrical and beautiful and colourful. And I think a lot of that theatricality is neglected a little bit in British film, and I just want to bring that back. It's not something that's, you know, things like Powell and Pressburger, and, you know, there are many British films that were colourful, and it's like we've sort of forgotten that because we think we don't have enough money to do it. But I wanted to bring that back, and I was just lucky that I had some really talented artists around me, a talented crew to kind of make it work on the money that we had.
And it does feel quintessentially British as well in its comedy. And I feel like I need to go back and watch it again to catch all of the funny lines. And of course, that's also because of the people you've chosen in your cast with Nick and Tanya and Yurin. What do you think that ingredient is? What makes that British comedy thread so strong?
I mean, I really strongly believe in sort of collaboration and spontaneity and organic collaboration. And I think with streamers and stuff, people don't realise that a lot of the spontaneity is hammered out of the process. You know, that there are a lot of execs that need to approve a new line, for example. And for me, independent film is that place where you're like, well, we can keep all of that stuff and we can come up with a funny idea on the spot and keep it in. And to me, that's the joy. You know, you're catching those little glimpses. Everybody loves outtakes. outtakes. And the reason they love it is because they're fresh and original, and you're catching a glimpse of something you wouldn't otherwise get to see. And I'm like, well, why not put those outtakes in the main film? I don't understand it. But you'd be surprised how many film processes don't include that. And I'm like, well, my films do include that. There's all that extra stuff which I think makes the scene really vital and alive and fresh, hopefully.
I know you've spoken a lot about, it's taken 7 years to make this film, saying we need more opportunities to make indie film, particularly for women. Do you feel like there's progress being made? Obviously, you're paving the way by making your films, but, what else needs to happen to make sure we see that move more quickly?
I think it's really interesting. There's so many amazing female filmmakers out at the moment. And I think sometimes there's a danger, though, that they're only allowed to make a certain type of film. Maybe they're only allowed to make films about women, or they're only allowed to make a certain horror film. And I just feel like, okay, there are several female directors who've now proved themselves in that arena. We should now be allowed to make whatever the hell we want, in the way that several art house male directors are allowed to just do what they want. Not have to have stuff be so heavy and socially responsible, because I'm a bit like, well, that leaves the women with all the unfun things to do. They've got to make a message each time of their film. What if you just want to be Spielberg, And I think that's the next stage of kind of women making films about whatever the heck they want, really. The thing is about this country is we have such a wealth of talent, we've got so many amazing people, and I just think there is a way through, and it's about, if you love it, you'll do it, and you will find a way to do it. And I just think having a bit of faith, I think that's what this industry needs, is faith and belief and self-respect for our own talent, our homegrown talent, and what amazing things we have to say. I don't think we should be copying the Hollywood model. I think that's the mistake the film industry makes a lot, is trying to emulate the Hollywood model, and I think we should just be following our own.